the final piece of the Old Testament is that it predicts the Messiah and it predicts the New Testament. In Jeremiah 31:31-33, it says, "Behold, the days are coming, declares the Lord, when I will make a new covenant with the house of Israel and the house of Judah, not like the covenant I made with their fathers on the day when I took them from the hand to bring them out of the land of Egypt, my covenant that they broke, though I was their husband, declares the Lord. For this is the covenant that I will make with the house of Israel after those days, declares the Lord. I'll put my law within them, and I'll write it on their hearts, and I will be their God, and they shall be my people." So the Old Testament, the Old Covenant, has an expectation of a new covenant coming. People who read the Old Covenant should be expecting a new covenant. As well as a covenant, it also predicts a coming Messiah. So the word Messiah means anointed one. There's other places in the Bible where someone's called an anointed one. We're only going to deal with the texts that talk about the anointed one. There's more, but this is just a sampling. So in Genesis 49, written in 1500 BC, it says, "Judah is a lion's cub. From the prey, my son, you have gone up. He stooped down, he crouched as a lion, and as a lioness. Who dares rouse him? The scepter shall not depart from Judah, nor the ruler's staff from between his feet, until tribute comes to him, and to him shall be the obedience of the peoples." In 1000 BC, the prophet Nathan said to David, "When your days are fulfilled and you lie down with your fathers, I will raise up your offspring after you, who shall come from your body, and I will establish his kingdom. He shall build a house for my name, and I will establish the throne of his kingdom forever." The Son of David rules the world forever. "In his days may the righteous flourish and peace abound, till the moon be no more. May he have dominion from sea to sea and from the river to the ends of the earth." That's written in 950 BC in Psalm 72. 150 years later, in Isaiah, it says, "Of the increase of his government and of peace there will be no end on the throne of David and over his kingdom, to establish it and uphold it with justice and righteousness from this time forth and forevermore. The zeal of the Lord of hosts will do this." Same theme. Zechariah 9, written in 520 BC, talking of this guy, says, "He shall speak peace to the nations. His rule shall be from sea to sea and from the river to the ends of the earth." Paralleling Psalm 72 that we saw earlier. This chart represents prophecies relating to the Messiah as king of the whole earth. Another theme is the theme of suffering and death. So in Genesis 3:15, 1500 BC, it says, God says to the serpent, "I will put enmity between you and the woman, and between your offspring and her offspring. He shall bruise your head, and you shall bruise his heel." So this is talking about the woman's descendant defeating Satan. In Psalm 22, written in 1050 BC, this psalm says, "A company of evildoers encircle me. They have pierced my hands and feet. I can count all my bones. They stare and gloat over me. They divide my garments among them. For my clothing they cast lots." Now you may think that sounds a little vague. If you do, just go away and read the whole psalm. It gets a lot more specific. Go see for yourself. In Isaiah 53:4, talking about the same instance as Psalm 22, it says, "Surely he has borne our griefs and carried our sorrows, yet we have seen him stricken, smitten by God and afflicted. But he was pierced for our transgressions, he was crushed for our iniquities. Upon him was the chastisement that brought us peace, and with his wounds we are healed." So Psalm 22 is like a first-person perspective on this. He talks about being pierced by others, and Isaiah 53 is a third person where it talks about him being pierced, written as an outsider looking in. In Daniel 9:26, it says, "After 62 weeks, an anointed one," as Messiah, "shall be cut off and shall have nothing. And the people who the prince is to come shall destroy the city and the sanctuary," that's the temple in Jerusalem, "and it shall come with a flood, and to the end there shall be war. Desolations are decreed." This is in 600 BC, so it predicts the Messiah will come, will die, and then the temple in Jerusalem will be destroyed. And that happened in 70 AD. So this is said 600 years before Jesus. The temple was destroyed 40 years after Jesus was raised from the dead. And then in Zechariah 12:10, it says, "I will pour on the house of David and the inhabitants of Jerusalem a spirit of grace and pleas for mercy, so that when they look on me, on him who they have pierced, they shall mourn for him, as one mourns from an only child, and weeps bitterly over him, as one weeps over a firstborn." The language is kind of strange here because God is describing someone else and also himself. but that's a surprise mouse tool we'll get to later. We see this other theme of the suffering and dying Messiah paired with the King of the whole earth Messiah. Then we see the divine Messiah as a theme in the Bible as well. So in 1000 BC, Psalm 45 says, "You have loved righteousness and hated wickedness. Therefore, God, your God, has anointed you with the oil of gladness beyond your companions." So God anoints God as the Messiah in Psalm 45. In Isaiah 9:6, it says, for to us a child is born, to us a son is given, the government shall be upon his shoulder, and his name shall be called Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace. Hebrew for mighty God there is El Gibor, Everlasting Father, Avi Ad. That's not a mistranslation, that's what it says. The Messiah, this child born, will be called Mighty God. Slightly subtler, but in Daniel 4:34, written 600 BC, Nebuchadnezzar describes God's kingdom as a dominion, is an everlasting dominion, and his kingdom endures from generation to generation. Then in Daniel 7, using the same language, it says, "I saw in the night visions, and behold, with the clouds of heaven there came one like a son of man, and he came to the Ancient of Days, and was presented before him, and to him was given a dominion, glory, and a kingdom, that all peoples, nations, and languages should serve him. His dominion is an everlasting dominion, which shall not pass away, and his kingdom one that shall not be destroyed." This is mixing this divine theme, using divine language to talk about this promised Messiah of David, as the Psalms have done before. And then in the book of Malachi, 400 years before Jesus, it says, "Behold, I send my messenger, he will prepare the way before me, and the Lord whom you seek will suddenly come to his temple, and the messenger of covenant in whom you delight, behold, he is coming, says the Lord of hosts." So in Daniel, it talks about the Messiah being killed before the temple is destroyed, and Malachi 3 talks about God himself coming to the temple. So we see the Messiah being God is a theme from the Old Testament as well. And then there's just sort of general details about the Messiah's life. So it says, "You, O Bethlehem, who are too little to be among the clans of Judah, from you shall come forth from me one who is to be ruler in Israel, whose coming forth is from old, from ancient days." 700 BC. In Zechariah, it says, "Rejoice, O daughter of Zion, shout aloud, O daughter of Jerusalem, behold, your king is coming to you, righteous and having salvation is he, humble and mounted on a donkey." That's in 520 BC. So the Messiah will ride to Jerusalem on a donkey, as Jesus did. And then Psalm 22 from 1050 BC says in the same psalm, that they divide my garments among them, and for my clothing they cast lots. So the people persecuting him are going to argue about who gets to keep his clothes. Again, this happens in the life of Jesus. And in Isaiah 53, it says, "They made his grave with the wicked and with a rich man in his death." When Jesus was killed on the cross and buried for 3 days, he was buried in the grave of a rich man, as the prophecies had said. And then in Psalm 22, it says, after he has suffered and died, that all the ends of the earth shall remember and turn to the Lord. All the families of the nation shall worship before you. In Isaiah, which comes right after the suffering servant, the same thing the psalm is talking about, it says, "Behold, I made him a witness to the peoples, a leader, a commander for the peoples. Behold, you shall call a nation that you do not know, and a nation that did not know you shall run to you, because the Lord your God, the Holy One of Israel, for he has glorified you." So what happens in the Messiah is what happens to the Messiah is that he suffers, he dies, he becomes king of the whole world, and that results in all the nations of the world turning to God and understanding God. And that is exactly what Jesus accomplished. He caused many nations of the world, billions of people living today, who used to be pagans, who used to believe in many gods, to turn to the one true God in worship, just as the Tanakh said the Messiah would. So you see all these converge in one place, in the Messiah, and Jesus fulfills all of this. So in summary, a future king is coming who will be the descendant of Judah and David, be born in Bethlehem, be born during the time of the Roman Empire before the destruction of the temple in AD 70, be referred to as mighty God, be rejected by his own people, be pierced, suffer and die, ultimately be victorious and live forever, and caused the nations of the world to believe in the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Jesus did all of this. So Jesus, when he comes, talking about the previous scriptures, says, "Do not think that I have come to abolish the law or the prophets. I have not come to abolish them, but fulfill them. For truly I say to you, until heaven and earth pass away, not an iota, not a dot will pass away from the law until all is accomplished." Jesus also says in John 10:35, Scripture cannot be broken. It can't be corrupted. So what you see is that the Old Testament predicts the New Testament, and the New Testament completely affirms the Old Testament. So people will say appealing to the Bible as your highest authority is circular. Yes, it is to some extent, but the Bible is not written by one person. It kind of comes in two halves, and both halves affirm each other. These are written by different people in different cultures and stay consistent with each other. And it's not simply just one guy wrote a book somewhere and you just have to believe that book.